in that will remind that person of their past, so that then the staff can look at that and then have something to converse about.
And it's so important, because if the home is not concerned about who that person is, if they are just going to be treated as a number with it, you are, immediately you've got to say there are real questions here.
Well, you know that it's only by the person-centred care that you are really going to have any liaison, any conversation, however minimal. You've got to know that person's background. And it's also finding out, do they do activities? Have they got a planned activity programme? Look and see if there's any evidence. Are there pictures on the wall of when the zoo came to visit? We've had zoos and all sorts of things happening. We have zoos. We had at Bristol, we used to have and they used to bring all the animals in. Well, taking
not the elephants,
pictures.
Surely.
No, we've had sheep and ponies and snakes, owls. We've had all sorts. But it's finding all that evidence of how that home runs. I did jot a few things down just to make sure I've not things like practical things like if my relative has an accident, will you inform me? I want that writing in the care plan. I want to be informed. If there's an illness, if the doctor's called, I would like to know. So it's finding out all those initial things that are going to be in place before you commit yourself. And having said that, I would just like to reassure people. People think that once they've gone in a care home, that's it for life. All homes will have contracts. But people are free to move. If you do find yourself in a really bad position where you are not happy, it's not the easiest thing moving an old person. It's not the ideal thing. But if you really feel that they are being so grossly neglected, it might be in the long term the best thing.
We had a case just recently now where the family of a lady in another home, a very nice home, 5-star kind of home, asked one of our home managers, because their relative was a Christian and they knew this lady, they said, would you have a look at her home? So Anne went along and looked, and she found this lady in this care home wedged in her chair. You're not, you don't use restraints, but if you wedge an older person in a chair, it's like a restraint. They can't move. And this was the attitude: keep them safe, wedge them down. And she said there in front of her was a curling bacon sandwich. So Anne said, well, let her try our home. Now the lady had stopped talking. There's very little you can do when your ability to do anything is limited. One thing you can do is stop talking. She'd stopped talking, but within a day at our home, she was talking again. Because they're her values, and her practices.
She could see, and she could feel the love of the people, isn't it?
Yes.
Louise, can I ask you for a definition of dementia?
Yes.
We talked about it. Let's have a definition on the table.
Although it's growing so fast. In fact, experts say that by 2012, every family in the country will have somebody with dementia. Dementia is an umbrella term that covers a condition that's caused actually by brain damage. Whether it's vascular dementia or Alzheimer's. Most people say Alzheimer's because that's the largest cause of it. It accounts for 57% of causes are down to Alzheimer's. But you've got actually a whole range of causes. You've got Lewy body dementia, frontal lobe dementia. There are all sorts of anything that affects the abilities of the neurons to send synapses to each other. I hope I'm saying that properly.
Please explain that. Right. Even I don't understand. And I know there's a lot of people that say, don't ask her what she means.
All right, this is what I mean. I should know better than this. Your brain is a very electrical thing. It's not just an engine. More and more they're discovering that you can't look at your brain as just an engine. It's not a mechanical thing. It's responsive to the environment. It's continually rewiring. It communicates by sending short, sharp sort of electrical bursts across. It's a synaptic. A synapse means there's a little neuron, there's another one, and you get between the two. When you get plaques and tangles, or you get gaps caused by insufficient blood, a vascular deficiency, you get the inability of the neurons to zap across to each other. So, and it is something that kind of grows. Once the plaques and tangles are there, they tend to develop more. But here is a very interesting thing. All the studies show that when people are part of a medical program for all sorts of reasons, they agree to have their brains autopsied. They should autopsy my brain, it would be interesting. But they find that nearly all of them are full of plaques and tangles. Now, dementia is nothing to do with old age. It just happens to come on.
Can you say that again? Because most people would
yeah, it isn't.
I'd really underline that, please.
Dementia is not a part of growing old. Dementia is rather like cancer. It becomes more prevalent with old age. And the biggest growing factor, the biggest growing demographic element now are the over 85s. The incidence of dementia is rising fast among those. So it's an umbrella term that describes a condition that comes about as a result of brain damage, of brain impairment, from one cause or another. So it's a big problem. Experts say it's coming in like a tsunami, it's going to sink the NHS, but the government has announced a new strategy, which you've probably read about.
Yeah, I've got some information here. Yes,
it's just beginning to take place.
Do you think it? Do you I mean, I suppose I'm a born skeptic, and I hear, these words, new strategy, and I think, well, he's putting it 10 years down the road.
Yes.
But from what you've seen, do you feel that there is new hope? Do you think people are taking these issues seriously, and that there is new hope, that something may be done to stem the tide?
Well, since I heard of it, because I was a journalist, I tend to be like a rat up a drain pipe. Yeah. So I've gone after it. I'm waiting now for 3 memory centres to come back to me with practical nuts and bolts descriptions of what they do. I've spoken to a couple of clinical psychologists, and I've been in touch with a psychiatrist in different parts of the country. They all want it to be for real. And as far as I can see, it's beginning to be put in place. But there's only 150 million pounds, wasn't it?
Yes.
The aim is to have a memory clinic in each town, each major town. Well, we have, 55 major towns in the UK? So that's not going to be spread very, very far. I do think, though, there are 3 good things that have come through. One is that the government is very good at spin. And it's set out to address ageism and stigma. And it is doing that. I think it genuinely is making a good move in the setting up of these memory clinics. But we know at least one person who's been waiting 2 months already. And the big danger is that there will be a long queue. We know, too, that in the early stages there is no pharmaceutical intervention. There's no drug that you can have on the NHS. You have to buy it, although it's available in the moderate to late stages. But they are talking about training carers and giving people who are caring practical support, somebody going along and helping. Now that's invaluable, because part of the strategy is to move people with dementia out of hospital.
Yes.
Now the weight of caring for somebody who's been hospitalised is huge.
Yes, in other words, that then comes down on the family, is what you're saying. Yes.
It does, but the promise is for care, and we know from the story that we're writing, Janet and I are working on a follow-up book to that one, and there is a couple who we're working with where the husband has developed dementia, and based on their story, we're weaving into the narrative helpful tips, things to do, what's available, and how to cope. Now, this lady called Linda, she is having practical care. So that's the government policy, and it will be very interesting